All right. So I said I'd start with the definition. I wasn't lying. There is one for you now. So this definition is from one of the few grading books that I have got from dressmaking world that's useful. And it's a book by Jean Price and Bernard Samkoff called Grading Techniques for Fashion Design. And they define grading, as the process of proportionally increasing or decreasing a master pattern according to a prescribed set of body measurements. It is the skill of changing one size into another without losing the style proportions established by the designer. So I've got particular emphasis there on proportion and proportionally, because it's these things that inform all the grading processes and decisions that you make throughout. I think one of the things that people get very caught up in is because the grading results in the generation of a lot of numbers, but those numbers are informed by proportions, ratios, percentages, the kinds of things that we were talking about at the very beginning of the pattern drafting module. And I'll recap some of those handouts a bit later. So a few more definitions here. I'll just leave them up on the screen. I'll give you the slides afterwards as well, of course. But this is just to introduce some of the terminology that I will use that will be in this course, but also in most other literature that you'll find in grading when you do your own research into that. So problem, we're looking at the sort of mathematical or physics or scientific definition of problem, which is to say an inquiry starting from given conditions to investigate or demonstrate something. And so when people refer to design or any creative pastime or profession as problem solving, this is the kind of thing that they mean. So I would say for this definition, it would be demonstrate, because we've got a visual craft, I think, with knitwear design. So you're going to be more demonstrating. There is some investigation there, but I'd say demonstrate more for our purposes. And we also have algorithms, which I'll spend a bit more time on later. And an algorithm, probably most familiar from computing, but that's a process to be followed in calculations or other problem-solving operations. So that involves just the steps you take. So you can think of recipes as algorithms. So you have your ingredients, you have the processes to cook whatever it is you're making, and then the output is the finished dish. And those steps would be an algorithm. And then we have a system, which is a set of things working together as part of an interconnected network. And so what that is partly what we've been doing throughout these modules. So you've all been coming up with your own systems and processes of working, and grading is no different. Grading is a system of itself, but it has to fit in with your needs as well. And then last, just a bit more technical for computing and maths. So input, you've got data, which is inserted into a system for processing and or storage. And then you've got output, which is the data sent out of the system. And those are the key things that we'll need for grading a pattern, these terminology here. Okay, so the algorithms, I've spent time using terminology for algorithms because grading is very much an algorithmic process. You are creating your own algorithms when you grade patterns by way of your sizing charts, your grading charts, all the tools you need to create the grade that's required for your design. But the thing not to lose sight of is that this is, a wheel within a wheel. The entire design process itself can be understood as an algorithm, because what you feed your grading system is the culmination of all the steps that you've gone to get to that stage. And I feel that contextualizing design or the design process in this way is helpful for understanding the purpose of grading and why you should think of it primarily as a design function. because not just because obviously without a design there is no pattern to grade, but also because many of the qualities of your design are going to inform how you grade it and why you will choose to make certain grading decisions. So at the very least, grading had its roots in design, and a well-graded pattern will have been overseen by a design-oriented eye. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, because it can be a bit of an intimidating process and people are thinking about numbers, and getting things to fit into the size chart, sometimes key things can get lost, or people panic, or they don't see it as the holistic process that it is. So again, it's a wheel within a wheel, but don't lose sight of the original design. It's not about getting it to conform to your size chart. I don't want you to take off your design hat just yet. Don't lose sight of what got you there in the first place. So, okay. So what I wanted to give you here is from the International Institute in Geneva. They are computer science specialists, and I quite like to keep an eye on them because they have a nice way of presenting algorithms. And I wanted to share with you these 6 steps that they have at the link below in algorithm development, since that's what you'll be doing when grading patterns. So these 6 steps are definition of the problem, development of a model, specification of the algorithm, design of the algorithm, implementation of the algorithm, and then finally testing. And I'm going to give that some additional context and relate that directly to what we have been doing so far and how we've understood knitwear design, whether in this course or elsewhere. So here's how I would map it. I hope I'm not going too fast. So related to these 6 steps that we had before, visual communication is where you define your problem as far as algorithms are concerned. So this is, again, going back to the wheels within wheels thing. So this is the design process as an algorithm, not yet grading. We'll get to that. So with visual communication, you're thinking about what you want to design, working out your design ideas. And so this is just you thinking on paper as well as in your head. So no particular agenda just yet. This is just that lovely doodling experimental phase where you're not thinking about anybody else. Those who are with me for visual communication, you might remember me, it was months ago, I know, saying that this is where you need to be selfish. Don't think about anybody else yet. It's your drawing, your style, your mode of communicating, and getting comfortable with how you express yourself and your ideas. So that's how you define the problem. What do you want to do? What are you thinking about? And working that through, using tools like pen and paper or paint, if you like. The next step, design development, is development of a model according to the previous bits from Geneva. And this is where you give form to your ideas. You're experimenting with silhouette and surface pattern, design elements and principles, and you're generating ideas as well. I hadn't put that on the slide because there was not enough room there. But this is very much where your ideas are taking shape, and you're looking at how could this be possible and going through all different kinds of iterations or variations. You're still not necessarily settled down on one thing yet, but you're still thinking about what could this possibly be. And then your next step, pattern drafting, specification of the algorithm, which we've just done. This is where you're establishing relationships between the features of your design and the proportions of the human body. So again, this brings in the design elements and principles, particularly line, shape, and proportion, because we spent so much time discussing that in terms of anatomy, forgetting those key landmarks for drafting the pattern. And equally with the designs that you have in mind, they'll have their own particular landmarks as well, different things that are going to make them work, things that, could be placement, where does this need to land, conditions, pattern repeats, that kind of thing. And for this one, throughout, I'll give lots of worked examples. I'll give an example using a yoke, because a yoke for me, I feel like it's best considered in this module, just because the grading of the yoke can be, I don't want to say complex, but it helps to consider it alongside grading, because it will help you better inform the decisions you take when you come to expand or contract the proportions of the pattern. So there's lots to consider there, but I wanted to do it in this module. So I haven't mentioned yokes previously for a reason, because I'm going to do it here. This is the design process as an algorithm thus far. So the next step of this context is this little filter funnel here. So we have all these steps, and you can think of visual communication, design development, and pattern drafting as inputs, an input within themselves. So you have inputs and outputs within visual communication, design development, and pattern drafting as you work through those stages of the process. But together, they combine to create an input that kicks off the grading process. So the other thing that I want to point out is that I've been showing things in a linear fashion just for clarity, but I chose the funnel here because sometimes it is not always that straightforward. You might be going back and forth between different stages, revising as you go through each stage, because you've learned something in one phase that is based on information you didn't have before. So I just want to stress that now. It's not that you have to go bish, bash, bosh grade. Sometimes there will be a little bit of toing and froing as you work through the ideas. But essentially what will happen is that these three things, your visual communication, your design development, and your pattern drafting, those will all feed into the grading process, no matter how you tackle them beforehand. Okay. And last visual for now is looking at the grading process itself against that same model. So you're designing your grading algorithm according to your sizing charts and your grading charts. And from that, you can generate or derive what are called grade rules and increments. And I'll come back to those in future lessons. And having established those, you can then implement that algorithm. And that involves deploying grading techniques. And there are lots of these. They are informed by you as the designer and the character of the design itself. And also you can implement them through CAD or manual computation. And this particular stage, implementation, it's fair to say that it almost doesn't matter how you do it, so long as you get there and so long as you can explain it, communicate it, and get it to make sense. I mean, for my own practice, I draw, I use Excel. It's whatever helps you to understand how to grade the pattern, how to understand its aesthetics, its proportions, etc. So there's nothing cut and dried here. And there'll be times where you need to find your own path, make your own decisions. And, we have a group here that you can talk to and bounce ideas off of, and I'll leave space for you to then work things out. And space after this module's formally done as well. I'll come back to that a bit later. But the implementation stage, that is very much a problem-solving task as defined earlier. And then lastly, we've got testing. And this is where you have a look at what you have done so far. There's lots of self-evaluation and reflection there. And then also in the testing, I would include pattern testers and tech editors, because they'll be checking things. By that testing phase, all your ratios and proportions will have been translated or interpreted as discrete data, as number, but everything you've done before is working towards that end goal. Many of the grading principles I'll discuss with you in this module. They're similar to woven patterns, which is not just because that's where I began, but it's just because you're deploying them differently due to the nature of the fabric.